Of the Journal of the 48th session, Wednesday, December 14, and consider 2016, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, on November 7, 2016, our colleague, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito, delivered a speech announcing that out of respect for the rule of law and his belief in the fairness and probity of the Sandigan Bayan, he would start serving his 90-day preventive suspension ordered by the Sandigan Bayan. Now, this representation, Mr. President, noted that in the light of the aforesaid manifestation and following the Senate practice, we were bound and we are bound to bring before the body the suspension order. However, I acknowledge that the voluntary submission of Senator Ejercito would have made any decision of my committee, the Committee on Rules, moot and academic. So over our holiday break, we received our information that the Sandigan Bayan has acquitted Senator J.B. Ejercito from all the charges filed against him in a resolution issued by the Sandigan Bayan 5th Division on December 22, 2016, leading to the lifting of the 90-day suspension from the Senate. So with that, Mr. President, we are officially declaring that as far as this chamber is concerned, the 90-day preventive suspension of Senator Ejercito has ended. And this is for the information of the body, Mr. President.
Any comment from the floor regarding the manifestation of the Majority Leader? So there being no comment, the manifestation is noted, and welcome back, and congratulations to Senator J.B. Ejercito.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to acknowledge some guests in the Senate. We have the guest of Senator Zubiri, the board member of Lanao del Sur, 1st District, Ismael Mamarinta, and other guests, Mr. President.
To all of our guests, welcome to the Philippine Senate and Happy New Year to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we proceed.
Majority Leader, during the break, two of our colleagues celebrated their birthdays. Senator J.B. Ejercito on December 26 and Senator Ralph Recto on January 11. So maybe we should take time to greet them.
I'm still waiting for the pansit, Mr. President, from any of the two.
Can we have a minute suspension to follow up on the pansit?
Move to suspend the session for 1 minute.
Is suspended.
December 2016, submitting for the Senate's consideration and concurrence the Convention on Cybercrime, which was signed on 23rd November 2001 in Budapest, Hungary.
referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations.
Message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 13 December 2016, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes of House Bill number 3408 entitled An Act Appropriating Funds for the Operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1 to December 31, 2017 and for other purposes.
To the Archives.
Bills on first reading, 1285, an act to strengthen the Internal Affairs Service of the Philippine National Police, amending certain provisions of PNP law under Republic Act number 6975 as amended by Republic Act number 8551 and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Finance.
1286, an act establishing the virtual one-stop shop for the purpose of streamlining the permitting process of power generation projects, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Energy and Finance.
1287, an act lowering the compulsory and optional retirement age of public school teachers by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises and Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
1288, an act declaring the punong barangay as deemed ipso facto resigned from upon the filing certificate of candidacy, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 9006, otherwise known as the Fair Elections Act, and Batas Pambansa Bilang 881 entitled Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines and other election-related laws, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
1289, an act lowering the compulsory and optional retirement age of government employees, amending for the purpose sections 13B and 13A of Republic Act number 8291, otherwise known as the Government Service Insurance System Act of 1997, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises and Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
1290, an act establishing the Philippine Energy Research and Policy Development Institute, defining its objectives, powers, and functions, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Energy, Science and Technology, and Finance.
Resolution number 256 entitled Resolution Directing the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation to look into the possible reorganization of the Bureau of Immigration, Senator Trillanes.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
257, Resolution recommending the Metro Manila Development Authority to establish a film festival exclusively for the independent films during the long semestral break, Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media.
Communications, letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Senator Subiri, yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just noticed that with due respect to all our members, on PS Resolution number 256, on the possible reorganization of the Bureau of Immigration, would it be prudent to also refer it to the Committee on Justice? Because the Department of Justice has jurisdiction of the Bureau of Immigration. I just like to throw that to the body, Mr. President. Maybe we can ask the
We
majority
can
floor
get
leader
the opinion of the Majority Leader.
Well, as a secondary committee, I have no objection, Mr. President.
So, is your idea secondary or primary? The Justice Committee?
Mr. President, I would like to, maybe a discussion between the committee chair. The problem is the committee chair is not here. At this point in time, it's the 100th birthday of the father. The
In the
chairman of
meantime-
Justice Committee.
He is here.
Oh, Senator Gordon, I beg apologies.
Senator Trillanes is
Mr.
recognized.
President, I author this resolution. It's primarily a reorganization of the Bureau of Immigration. And therefore, it's the Civil Service Committee who has primary jurisdiction. The Department of the Committee on Justice, having oversight functions over the Department of Justice can be the secondary committees. That's in accordance with the rules, Mr. President.
I defer to the chairman of the Committee on Justice if he will agree, Mr. President. I just submit to the chairman.
It's not a matter of agreement, Mr. President, with all due respect. It's a matter of our rules.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm just this is more like parliamentary courtesy because we're discussing a department or a bureau under the Department of Justice. So I'm not insisting on any position. I would just like to hear the position of Chairman Gordon, Mr. President. I did not make any motion.
Senator Gordon?
I'm coming in empty right now, Mr. President, but I understand that the debate is about the Bureau of Immigration, which at last recall is part of the Department of Justice. So if there is any resolution or bill or investigation concerning these departments or this department, it is my humble representation that it should go to the Department of the Committee on Justice, unless I think that's clear within the rules.
Mr. President, under our rules, the Committee on Civil Service, Government Organization, and Professional Regulation shall have jurisdiction over the reorganization of the government or any of its branches or instrumentalities. And this resolution falls squarely within that committee. The Committee on Justice has, on the other hand, has the jurisdiction over
Page 18, sir, of our rules.
The Committee on Justice, on the other hand, has jurisdiction over matters relating to the organization and administration of justice, civil courts, penitentiaries, reformatory schools, probation, impeachment proceedings, etc. So it is we clearly see that it is the Committee on Civil Service who has primary jurisdiction. The inclusion of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights is as a secondary committee is certainly consistent with the rules.
With all due respect, Mr. President, if the gentleman is finished, I'm reading the rules here, and the Committee on Justice and Human Rights says 9 members. All matters relating to the organization and administration of justice, civil courts, penitentiaries. I just make particular attention. I don't have to go throughout the whole thing, and it says here down the line by impeachment, registration of land titles, immigration, and naturalization. All that is there, Mr. President. And the operative word is, I suppose, all matters relating to the organization and administration of justice. Of course, the organization refers to the subject cabinet position, and administration of justice refers to the day-to-day purpose of the creation of the Department of Justice. I submit, Mr. President.
The matter of the jurisdiction of the Committee on Justice is on the substantial matters on immigration. Insofar as the reorganization of the Bureau of Immigration, that clearly falls within the Committee on Civil Service and Reorganization.
So actually this possible overlap which happens time and again, but the PS Resolution 256 has already been referred, so do I hear a motion for reconsideration so we can properly process? Is there a motion to reconsider?
It was an inquiry, Mr. President.
There has been no motion to reconsider the referral?
May we ask for that this be referred to the Committee on Rules so that we can discuss it more substantially and intelligently, Mr. President?
It has already been referred to the Committee on Justice, of the Committee on Civil Service, and this is consistent with the precedent in this chamber on resolutions of this nature. All reorganizations are referred to the Committee.
I have no argument with the word reorganization, Mr. President, but this applies to a cabinet position that includes immigration, and therefore the substantive elements of immigration and the rules thereof should be covered under the administration, as pointed out here, on the organization and administration of justice. And therefore, when you have something like a scandal brewing in the Department of Justice with respect to certain people in the administration, then the Justice Committee should be able to take a look at that, whether in fact there is substance to the reorganization.
Well, yes, as a secondary committee, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Well, why should it be a second, you know?
Because the primary jurisdiction is, the subject of the resolution is reorganization. And
Well, I mean-
therefore, that falls squarely within the jurisdiction of the...
Both, the word reorganization both appears in both the sections concerned. So, Majority Leader, can we ask for your opinion on how to settle this issue?
I move to suspend the session, Mr. President.
Okay, session is suspended.
Anong resolution? Secretary?
Ready? Go. We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
May we recognize Senator Dick Gordon, Mr. President?
Any objection? Hearing none, Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. In fairness to everyone, including this representation, I would like to request the Secretariat to furnish a copy of the resolution to everyone so we can see the objective of this resolution. Because if you look at the objective of this resolution, I think we can all decide for ourselves where it is headed. May I make that request, Mr. President? Then I would like to proceed as soon as everybody has a copy.
Secretariat is directed to provide each senator a copy of proposed Senate Resolution number 256.
Far be it from my mind to question the intentions of our friends, particularly my good friend Senator Dillon, who I've known for many, many more years than most of us here. And certainly, it is respect as gentlemen and as friends that I ask that we look at this in a fair and intelligible way, Mr. President. And that is why I'm asking everyone to take a look at it. Because on the surface, when you look at this resolution, it will show that the primary purpose is to really not to reorganize, as it doesn't say anything about reorganization. It just speaks about it in general terms, that they're going to have reforms, but there is nothing specific. Mr. President, if you look at the line-by-line structure, it is the title. Now, Mr. President, I've been in the Senate now on my... Wala pa raw iba. Can you... Excuse me, Mr. President, I'd like to have 1 minute.
We suspend the session for a minute.
Napasit. Walang baso.
256. Okay. Ako din pala. Kopya. Para mag-guide. Kopya mo. Kopya ito. At ibigay. So are we ready to resume? So, I think copies have been distributed, Senator. Okay, so
Yes, Mr.
Session
President.
is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. As, if everybody has read it and they can read it or skim through it very, very fast, we can see, Mr. President, the purposes of each committee, if you look at the rules. And then you look at the resolution, Mr. President, the only thing that makes it reorganization is the title. The substance of the whole resolution is allegedly to restructure. But there's not even any proposal whatsoever, any hint of a reorganization. It puts the specter of corruption, and therefore we have to reorganize this particular department. Now, if we follow the rule to its, the intent to its logical extreme, then the whole country, all the cabinet positions of the country, all the departments, will have to be restructured, and the Civil Service Committee will be a very powerful committee, because every time you reorganize on the basis of alleged graft and corruption, everybody will have to go through the Civil Service Committee, which doesn't talk about that. The Civil Service Committee says that all matters relating to the civil service and the status of officers and employees of the government, including their appointment, discipline, retirement, their compensation, privileges, benefits, and incentives, implementation of the constitutional provisions on the rights of government workers to form and join labor organizations, public sector, labor management, relations, and collective negotiation agreement, the organization of the government or any of its branches or instrumentalities, all human resource development programs pertaining to the government, and all other matters relating to the bureaucracy. On the other hand, Mr. President, the Committee on Justice clearly talks about all matters relating to the organization and administration of justice, civil courts, penitentiaries, which I believe should be investigated, quite frankly, and in reformatory schools, probation, impeachment proceedings against constitutional officers and other officers legally removable by impeachment, registration of land titles, immigration and naturalization, the implementation of the provisions of the Constitution on human rights, and all matters pertaining to the efficiency and reforms in the prosecutorial service, which, if you look at the substance, is the aim of the very proposal that is on the table, which is a mere resolution, Mr. President. If we want to reorganize, then you will have to premise this with a bill, because when you reorganize, then you will have to come out with new appropriations for the new committees that are going to be placed at that, and that will be covered then by the budget or by the finance or the Ways and Means Committee, in which case it goes into a big, big net. Now, Mr. President, we are all aware, and far be it from me to cast aspersions on the personalities in the Senate. I've tried, Mr. President, you are all aware that when you talk to me about some senators wanting to see me, I acceded right away, and you didn't hear from me after that, even if later on the whole game was changed again. But you've not heard from me, and to my mind, every senator should aim for a harmonious relationship here, that we can respect each other, and we don't have to flout the law. There are committees established here. If we flout the law under a system where just because we title something as a reorganization, when in fact it is really an investigation, which all of us want anyway, then let's give it to the proper committee. And the proper committee in this particular case, because this involves accountability of public officers, the principal committee is the Blue Ribbon, of which, unfortunately, I'm the chairman, Mr. President. As you know, Mr. Chairman, you very well know, you've told me I'm overloaded, and I am. And I have not complained. I have just tried to do my work. The principal person complaining all the time is Mrs. Gordon. But in reality, Mr. President, if we are going to follow the rules, and I'm sure everybody wants to follow the rules, we should go to the Committee on Blue Ribbon, because this is an investigation of that. But I had been asked by the media, am I going to investigate? I said I was still thinking about it, because I said we're not policemen. The Committee on Justice, the doctrine of exhaustion of administrative remedies, should be allowed to cleanse itself. If they cannot clean it, we should not waste the time of the Senate in useless investigations, which an injured, a wounded department can actually cleanse itself with. Otherwise, we will be going after everybody, and there will be no legislation made anymore. As it is, Mr. President, I really feel very disappointed. We worked very hard in the committee, and you know, Senator Lacson and myself, we were co-chair, we came out with proposals. I mean, in aid of legislation. There has never been a time that this representation, since he became a senator, has never investigated without a bill in aid of legislation. In fact, before the session closed last Christmas, I talked to the majority floor leader and I said, I don't think you have to refer the rules of the Committee on Justice to any other committee, because that is our proposal and everybody signed up on it, and I can actually sponsor it right away here to save us all time. I know that I've departed from the original thought, but the point is, Mr. President, I think we should all have some form of modus vivendi here, where if one wants to investigate, there's nothing that would prohibit anybody from coming to the chairman of a particular committee. I think that was very clear. I thought that was a very, very big responsibility that you foisted on me when you asked me to be Committee on Justice. And because of that, Mr. President, the Committee on Justice was handled well. Everybody had a chance. In fact, the difference in the Committee on Justice was that we gave everybody 10 minutes, and I asked the committee, if you are not happy with the 10 minutes, and if I think, trust me, that you can continue beyond the 10 minutes so that the idea, the notions that you put in will not be lost, you will be allowed. Because that is the objective, not the form of 10 minutes, but to go through the jugular, to go through the very essence of the investigation. And we did that to satisfaction. And we worked hard, long and hard. And that is why, in the same manner, if this falls on the Blue Ribbon Committee or the Justice Committee, I'm sure you know that this is going to be the same thing. We're going to have everybody go ahead, make your day, and investigate whoever you want to investigate. And by the way, the Blue Ribbon Committee will not be precluded. In fact, it is mandated to make sure that they come out with a proposed resolutions on reorganization, Mr. President. That is the proper course of events that should be followed in this particular instance. Not going beyond the law, not going through the motions of tiptoeing to get a resolution that you want to go to a particular member, because that sounds like forum shopping, but in reality, you want the justice to be victorious, to follow its course of investigation by 24 responsible senators, Mr. President. And I have no reason to believe that others are not responsible here. And that is why, Mr. President, I ask that everybody take a look at it. And like I said, the title, from its first instance, at first impression, says, and even my good friend Senator Lacson, my kababayan from Cavite, says, oh, I'll have to go there because mukhang ang title, ganun. I understand that. But if you look at the substance now, and if you go line by line, what are we reorganizing? What is the objective? Why are we putting the premise of these people who were caught? Should we be more interested in catching them before we reorganize? Isn't it proper for us to tell Mr. Aguirre, you better kick those guys out, and I want to see cases filed against these people right away in the Ombudsman? After all, the Ombudsman is going all over the place. In fact, the Department of Justice can file on their own. But, Mr. President, if we're going to waste the time of the Senate on ceaseless investigations, then we have heard it often said that we in the Senate investigate and investigate. Mahaba, pero wala nangyayari. I am really surprised because I came in very happily today and I didn't know that this was going to happen. And to disabuse the mind of my good friend, Franklin Trillanes, the honorable gentleman from Iloilo, I did not have any discussion with Senator Zubiri about this. I asked Senator Zubiri about a week ago that if he might want to sponsor something on the 100th anniversary of my father tomorrow. And I will ask the Senate, sheepishly here, to hopefully listen to it, and if you think it's worth it, to approve it, because tomorrow we will be in Olongapo to celebrate that. That's the only conversation I had. Yes. I never did discuss anything like this, so I'm sure Senator Trillanes will take my word for it. But anyway, those are my points, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Trillanes is recognized.
I will be very brief, Mr. President. First of all, here in the Senate, being a legislative body, we always look at precedents. We always base our actions today on the actions that we did yesterday. On record, Mr. President, in the 13th Congress, we filed a resolution, proposed Senate Resolution number 319 on August 23, 2005, which, the title of which is as follows: a resolution directing the Committee on Civil Service and Government Organizations to review the mandate and organizational structure of the Bureau of Immigration with the end in view of reorganizing the Bureau. This was referred to the Committee on Civil Service. So the precedent was the Committee on Civil Service was recognized to have the primary jurisdiction. In the 16th Congress, the Congress before this Congress, the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago filed proposed Senate Resolution 1247, which was based on the report that at least 40 officials of the Bureau of Customs are still working on salaries despite having expired job contracts. This reorganization proposal was referred to the Committee on Civil Service. Now, we take exception that there is something wrong with this resolution because it is a mere resolution. Precisely, Mr. President, we are invoking the authority of Congress to conduct investigation in aid of legislation through a resolution. So that one possibility is that this resolution, that as a result of the investigation, a proposed law will be submitted, as we have done in the past. The resolution, I recall very clearly, Mr. President, after the corruption in the GOCCs were exposed, we filed a simple resolution. That resolution was the subject matter or was the basis of an investigation. As a result of the investigation, the GOCC Governance Act was enacted. So it is not correct, and I take exception to the statement that it is a mere resolution and there is no specific proposal. Precisely, we file resolutions here because we want to investigate in aid of legislation. That the statement that the Civil Service Committee becomes very powerful, the place to debate on that is when we examine the rules and examine the jurisdiction of the Civil Service Committee. And that is precisely what we have here. In any case, Mr. President, during the off-the-record discussion, there was a proposal that we refer this to the Committee on Rules. So be it. If it's the will that it be referred to the Committee on Rules, that's the will of the majority. So we submit, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Drilon.
Mr. President.
Senator Subiri, yes?
Yeah, Mr. President, without casting any aspersion to any of our colleagues here, it's just that I clearly recall when I was Majority Floor Leader in the 14th Congress, discussions on the modernization of the Immigration Bureau was handled by Senator Chis Escudero, who was head of the Justice Committee at that time. And many other bureaus and departments that had gone reorg, it was out of parliamentary courtesy, were given to the committees in charge of that particular committee or portfolio. For example, in this Congress, Senate Bill number 17, Senate Bill number 85, and Senate Bill number 501, these are Philippine Immigration Act, modernizing the Bureau of Immigration, were all given to the Committee on Justice, Mr. President. So, nothing, we're not casting any aspersion on anyone. I just clearly recall, as Majority Floor Leader at the time, that we would refer these bills to the proper committee. For example, the modernization of the Coast Guard was given to the Public Services Committee because at that time it handled transportation and communication, Mr. President. Just
Yes.
food for thought. Thank you.
Senator Gordon?
Mr. President, before I can adequately discuss and acquit myself in the debate, I would like to ask for a copy of the so-called precedent. While it is true that we respect precedents, we're all lawyers. Precedents are a guide, but certainly every case has to be resolved in a manner that is fit, and that is to look at the substance of the law. But while we're getting it, and I'm requesting the Secretariat to get a copy of the rules, the precedent set that referred to by Senator Trillanes, I would like to lay before the committee, or the chair, and the plenary, this letter, and I'm asking that the original resolution that was filed be presented to us. I have here a copy of a letter signed by the distinguished gentle lady from Bicol, and it is dated 10 January 2017, and it is directed to Director Maria Antoinette Aristosa, Legislative Bills and Index Division. And it says, Dear Director Aristosa, this is respectfully withdraw the filing, and I'm asking for PSR number 258, I'm having it obtained now, entitled, A Resolution Directing the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recent Jack Lam bribery scandal involving Bureau of Immigration officials and the Secretary of Justice, filed last January 9, 2017. And we will be filing a replacement resolution on this matter. Thank you very much. While it is the prerogative of any senator to do so, what is very clear here was the original intention is really to investigate the anomaly, the alleged corruption being perpetrated in the Bureau of Immigration as reported by the Secretary of Justice. Quite frankly, I myself am cynical about the whole thing because I don't think we have really unraveled the whole picture. We're seeing the small fish, we're not really seeing the big fish. And that is why I look forward to this. I didn't want to be a hog in the sense that everything I have to investigate. I don't have to, Mr. President. I try to be responsible. But be that as it may, here is a copy of the original resolution, and I think it's coming here, PS 258, that was filed, and that was referred originally to the Committee on Accountability. Now, without casting aspersion, there must have been a double take when they realized that, whoops, Blue Ribbon will be under Senator Gordon. I can accept the fact that they don't have trust in me, if that is what they plan, if that is what they think, and I will accept that. I'm not in a popularity contest here, Mr. President. I try to do my job. But it also shows that somebody is forum shopping. And therefore, they come into a very, very, roundabout way of getting the committee, the right committee, in their own view, to investigate what they want to investigate. And I don't think Senator Trillanes is part of that. I hope not. But that is the point. Why would you file something and then withdraw it and then come out in another mask? And this time, the mask wants to reorganize. And yet, it's vague. In law, Your Honor, when you go to trial, the question is vague. What is the intention of these questions? It is vague. No substance, Your Honor. Bakit binabawi? Now, Mr. President, I am not eager to investigate, but if now that is happening now, I will motu proprio conduct an investigation, if that has to be done. Because that is within the ambit of the powers of the Blue Ribbon Committee. And I've said so. I'm still studying it. I try to look before I jump. And therefore, some people jump right away and referred it to the committee when they found out it was going to be reported to the Committee on Blue Ribbon. Oops! About face, put on another mask. Let's tear down the mask. The mask is to investigate the Department of Justice. If that is so, why are we afraid to investigate it? They will have all the time in the world to ask the questions. I don't even want to refer today. Every senator will have the right. So long as they ask the questions, they can go on and on and on and ask questions. And that is my assurance, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I think we have all seen the resolutions. I'm still trying to get 258. I hope they can get it right away. I think it really speaks for itself. Res ipsa loquitur. The original intention is to investigate the corruption. But now it has gotten bigger, and now it is now to reorganize. What will happen if we all start reorganizing the whole country? If after every investigation, and it falls in the committee that is not to our liking, then every senator says, we will reinvestigate it, we'll put it on the committee on rules, etc., etc. I think it's going to go to this. That is precisely why I'm standing up. I came here unknowing of what's happening. I came in, and having said that, I can catch up very fast. I do know that we may be flouting the rules, and I would not want to be party to flouting the rules. I would not try to downgrade the committee of my colleague here by going up in a roundabout manner and taking a bill. Now, I've taken bills before, Mr. President, that were not in my committee, but the committee chair asked me to sponsor them. And I can tell you the International Libertarian Law was under Senator Escudero, and she gave it to me, and I sponsored it. The Mariveles Freeport Zone, he gave it to me, and I continued on with it until both became laws. Or the law on free patent, again, that was referred to me. I have done that before, Mr. President. And, Mr. President, we are above board when we do that. Not in a very insidious way. Not through the back door. Let's go to the front door, Mr. President. When you file a bill, let us take a look exactly. That's why we have a committee on rules to take a look at the substance or the intention of the law itself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator De Lima, Senator De Lima?
Yeah.
Did you raise your hand? Okay, Senator De Leon is recognized.
just for the record, I reject any insinuation that there is a cabal here on this particular issue. We filed our resolution, PS Resolution 256, on December 15. On December 15, we filed our resolution. I'm sorry. On December 15,
Yes.
we filed a proposed Senate Resolution 256. At that point, proposed Senate Resolution 258 was not even in the air. So there is no, it is clear that we filed the resolution almost a month before the Lima Resolution 258 was filed, and therefore we take exception to any insinuation that there is a cabal here.
I didn't say a cabal, Mr. President, with all due respect.
But that the language used by the gentleman from Zambales it clearly implies that there was a conspiracy. There is
No, Mr. President, I did not say that.
just for the record. Thank you, Mr.
The De Leon
Senator.
resolution is numbered 256. Therefore, it was
May we get a
filed
copy of this?
ahead of 258.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to get a copy because it astounds me that two numbers in between, or two numbers after 256, 258, and all of a sudden we're changing our minds. So, be that as it may, I will stand corrected if the resolution is presented here, but nonetheless, if 258 was never sponsored, nonetheless, there was an intention, the original intention, or the intention of the author, is to investigate the Blue Ribbon Committee. And why should she
258, yeah.
file 256, which is to reorganize?
256 has been filed by Senator De Leon.
I filed
Yes.
256.
Okay, Senator DeLong filed 256, and then 258 was filed, and maybe out of respect for the seniority of Senator DeLong, she withdrew it. And to me, that is the way I will leave it at that.
Yeah.
I will take the word for granted. I will take the word of the gentleman.
Are you done, Senator Gordon? Because Senator De Lima is raising her hand.
Well, she can do that.
Okay, Senator De Lima is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I just also express my lamentation. It's lamentable that this is again being made an issue about questioning the motivation of a member of the Senate in first filing a particular resolution and subsequently withdrawing it. May I state for the record the reasons why this representation felt it necessary and appropriate to withdraw resolution PS, originally PS resolution number 258 is because my attention was called to the prior filing of this resolution of the Honorable Senator Frank Drilon, resolution number 256. And when I went over it, I realized that this is broader in scope, because it seeks to further inquire into all the structural deficiencies that may be attributed as a cause for some acts of corruption within the Bureau of Immigration. Yes, while it was the original intent of the author of the original PS Res number 258 to go into the alleged acts of corruption involving 2 BI commissioners, and even with respect to the Secretary of Justice himself, who admitted that there was also an offer to bribe him by Mr. Jack Lam. But when I saw this resolution of Senator Frank Drilon, I realized that this is the best way to go about it, because it is, again, broader in scope. So, in the interest of focus, in the interest of efficiency, in looking into the matter, I decided to withdraw. And that is the very prerogative of any member of the Senate. So, imputation of some kind of a bad faith or ill motive is definitely very offensive on the part of this representation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator De Lima. Senator Trillanes, recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we have several items on the agenda today, and I believe we also exhausted or squeezed all the juice out of this particular issue. So at some point we need to resolve it, because the status now is the resolution has been referred to the Civil Service Committee. Now, I believe the issue at hand is there is an overlapping of function, just as mentioned by the Senate President. Most of the committees have that. But we should give a premium of some sort to the author. If he prefers that the resolution that he authored be handled by a particular committee that he prefers, then we should respect that. I believe just out of sense of propriety, kung ayaw sa committee mo, bakit pinagpipilitan mo yung sarili mo? Di ba? I believe, hindi naman siguro ganon. Pero, while the gentleman from Zambales keeps on saying that he doesn't want to cast aspersions on his colleagues, I believe that's exactly what's happening. He is doubting, in this case, is it my capability to conduct a fair and objective committee hearing on the matter, or he probably feels superior in his world. In his world, he probably feels superior in handling such hearings. But I believe that's the issue at hand. Now, in my case, if he perceives or he doubts the intentions of the author and the committee chairman, I can also throw that same doubt to the defenders of the faith. How come they are closing ranks to make sure that this resolution doesn't fall into my committee? At any rate, Mr. President, we're waiting for that particular motion so
Yes.
that we can decide on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now resolve the issue?
Yes,
Senator
Mr. President.
Subiri?
Yes, Mr.
last-
President, before
last
any
word,
more
last word, yes.
hurtful any more hurtful phrases or statements be made by any side. Mr. President, before I make the proper motion, I'd just like to give an example. This representation, being chairman of the Committee on Trade and Commerce, had jurisdiction of one particular bill, which is the amendments of the corporate code. But Senator Drilon had asked me, it was already referred to the committee, but Senator Drilon had asked me if he could hear it and take over, and I gladly, being that he is a seasoned and very experienced lawyer, gave in to him. So that's what I was mentioning lang earlier when I raised this issue, because it's really jurisdiction of committees, which is a, how do you say, may parliamentary courtesy po tayo sa ating mga kasamahan. So, with that, so that we can move forward, it's the first day of session, we have a lot of things to do. May I move, Mr. President, to ask for the reconsideration of the particular resolution and be brought to the Committee on Rules for further discussion and taken up as soon as possible, back to the floor for whatever action may be. I think that's usually the normal, that is the normal course of action if there's a debate between referrals of particular committees. I think that's satisfactory to everybody because we're not objecting, we're just saying that we're going to bring it to the Committee on Rules to discuss further which particular committee really is in charge. I so move, Mr. President.
So there's a motion for us to reconsider the referral of proposed Senate Resolution number 256, which we first made to the Committee on Civil Service, that it be, because of the differing opinions as to the proper committee, it be referred in the meantime for study to the Committee on Rules. Okay. Is there any objection? Senator Trillanes?
Mr. President, I object to the motion of Senator Zubiri.
There is an objection, so following our rules, we have to divide the House. Those, Minority Leader, please.
Yes, what is the status of the referral of this resolution to the committee? Didn't we approve the referral?
Yes, now.
already to
Yes,
the
now.
committee
Yes.
on- So the first that should be debated on or voted upon should be the objection, if at all,
There's a motion.
to reconsider.
Yes.
Okay, so the first vote should be to reconsider first.
Yes, now.
The referral to the committee.
Right.
So we are not voting on to whether it should be referred again to the Rules Committee.
Majority Leader, should we
Precisely, Mr. President.
resolve it in one go or
Let me,
in two
let
steps?
me clarify the motion. The motion is to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution 256. That is the motion. To reconsider the referral. That is the motion. The intent to refer it to the Committee on Rules would be an automatic happening when something like this comes up. But we can consider that motion later. But we have to resolve
So we
first
will
the
divide-
motion
Okay.
to reconsider the referral to the Committee on Civil Service. Yun muna. And then because there is an objection. Are we,
Is there, if there's,
do you concur? Yeah.
May we ask for suspension so that we can approach the committee? Can I ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
any
so that we can-
objection? Hearing none, session is suspended. Tama, ganun na lang.
Step by step, bali. 2 steps. 2 steps. 2 steps. Yes, I will withdraw and,
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Can the majority leader state the parliamentary situation?
Yes, Mr. President, before the suspension, Senator Sabiri proposed a motion, and Senator Trillanes objected to the motion. The motion contained two actions. One is to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution 256 to the Committee on Civil Service. And the next motion was to refer it to the committee, or the compound motion was to refer it to the Committee on Rules. And Senator Trillanes objected to the motion. May I now amend the motion of Senator Sabiri, Mr. President,
Yes,
with the concurrence of Senator Sabiri?
yes, Mr. President, I have no objection after discussing it with the majority floor leader. I move to withdraw my motion so that he can come up, or he can, I will defer to his...
All right. Withdrawal is enough. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
President.
you, Senator Subiri. Majority leader, please
Yes,
go
in
ahead.
that case, the table is clear. Therefore, I move to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution 256.
Is there any objection? Minority leader?
Mr. President, the resolution has already been referred to the committee, and now the majority leader is making a new motion similar to the motion of Senator Zubiri to reconsider the referral to the Committee on Civil Service. May I also make an amendment to the motion of the majority leader? Why not just continue with referring the resolution to the Civil Service Committee as the primary committee and the Justice Committee as a secondary committee?
That is precisely the objection that was raised by Senator Gordon, Mr. President. That was the original proposal which we wanted to propound. But issues were raised, and Senator Gordon brought out the resolution. And for me, Mr. President, originally I had the same inclination. I was going to ask that that be considered, but we have other members of the Senate who have a different perspective.
Then maybe, Mr. Senate President, we should vote on the matter.
Yes, that's why we're voting on the motion to consider the referral, reconsider the referral of PS Resolution 256.
And
That is the
I am
motion.
registering an objection, Mr.
There is an
President.
objection, Mr. President, so we have to divide out.
Who else wants to speak? Senator Pangilinan? Yes.
Just a matter of procedure, Mr. President. Assuming hypothetically that the motion for reconsideration is approved, the referral therefore to the Committee on Committee on
Civil Service.
Civil Service is reconsidered.
Yes.
The
Yes.
resolution is then back on the floor, and then we will decide in plenary as to where to bring the said resolution.
After hearing the report of the Committee on Rules on the matter. If ever there's a motion to
Yes.
refer it, yes.
So no, okay. There is no referral to the rules as of yet.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah, right.
We are just reconsidering the referral to the Committee on Civil Service.
Yes.
If hypothetically it has been reconsidered, meaning the motion is approved, the resolution is back in plenary. And then we will decide in plenary as to where to refer the same.
Yes, that's correct, that's correct.
Just for clarification.
That's correct. So there is now a motion to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution number 256 to the Committee on Civil Service. And there has been an objection. So we will have to divide the House. And we vote by the raising of hands. Those in favor of the motion to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution number 256, please raise your hand. Hindi niyo nabilang? First regular session of
PS Resolution 256.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the good sponsor yield to several questions
With pleasure,
from this
Mr. President.
representation? Certainly, this bill is probably one of the most desired and awaited pieces of legislation insofar as the general
of 14 in favor and 7 against the motion to reconsider the referral of PS Resolution number 256 is carried or approved.
Mr. President, tradition and propriety dictates that in an action like this, the referral should, the resolution or the measure at hand should be referred to the Committee on Rules. And therefore, I move that we refer the PS Resolution 256 to the Committee on Rules.
There is a motion to refer proposed Senate Resolution number 256 to the Committee on Rules. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, I think we should continue with the referral of business because it was interrupted by the motion of Senator
Yes,
Zubiri.
manifestation from
Senator
Senator
Trillanes
Trillanes,
is recognized.
Just a manifestation for the record. The Senator Trillanes earlier said that any resolution, the referral of any resolution should take into account the wishes or the preference of the senator who authored it. Mr. President, when I was a Senate President and Senator Pimentel, if I may recall, agreed with me on the point that in determining the referral of any resolution or any bill, it should be the rules which should govern, not the preference of the senator. I am just stating that on the record of what we did when we were the Senate President. Whether or not that will be followed by this Congress is a matter that this Congress should decide. We are just stating what we followed when we were the President of the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. President.
Plus the fact that it should be the body which will govern rather than the title or the caption. Thank you.
Certainly, yes.
Thank you, sir. Secretary, please continue with the reference of business.
Communications. Letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act number 7653. Circular letter numbers CL-2016-096 and 097 dated 1 and 2 December 2016, circular number 931 dated 9 December 2016, and memorandum number M-2016-019 dated 29 November 2016.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies. Are we done? Okay. Majority Leader?
President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1277 under Committee Report Number 19.
Is there any objection? There being none, we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1277 under Committee Report number 19.
Mr. President, this is the measure on free internet access program. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are in the period of interpellation. So may I now move that we recognize the sponsor, chairman of the committee on, sorry. Mr. President, before I ask that we recognize the sponsor, as I said, the parliamentary status is that we have opened the period of interpellation, but we have not started with it. So, at this point, with the permission of the chamber, Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Grace Poe to deliver a co-sponsorship speech on the free internet access program before we go into the period of interpellation, Mr. President. And before her co-sponsorship speech, she would like to make a manifestation, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to the slight modification made by the majority leader? Okay, there being none, Senator Poe is recognized to first make a manifestation and to deliver her co-sponsorship speech.
Mr. President, good afternoon. As chair of the Senate Committee on Public Services, I would like to manifest that I am designating Senator Cheese Escudero as my additional vice chair for Public Services. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. With the permission of the good sponsor, I respectfully would like to request that I be made a co-author of Senate Bill number 1277, or the Free Internet Access in Public Places Act. I filed Senate Bill number 1244, or an act modernizing all public schools and state colleges and universities in the Philippines, which was referred to a different committee, the Committee on Education, Arts, and Culture. My bill requires internet connectivity in all public schools and SUCs. I believe that having a free and stable internet access will enable people to access skills training, research, traffic updates, routes, and other information speedily that will aid them in their everyday lives. It will also help them connect with others freely through wireless technology. As a common saying goes, knowledge is power. And there are many benefits to having information at the tip of your fingers, that it outweighs whatever negative impact this might allegedly bring, like the proliferation of trolls in social media. As such, it goes without saying that I strongly support free internet access in public places and wish to be part of this landmark measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, with that, I move to open the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Hearing none, we are now in the period of interpellation for Senate Bill number 1277 under Committee Report number 19.
May we now recognize the chairman of the Committee on Science and Technology, Senator Bam Aquino, and to interpellate Senator Laila de Lima, Mr. President.
Senator Aquino, as chairman and sponsor, is recognized, and Senator de Lima to interpellate is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the good sponsor yield to several questions
With pleasure,
from this
Mr. President.
representation? Certainly, this bill is probably one of the most desired and awaited pieces of legislation insofar as the general public is concerned. But may I just ask a few questions?
Yes, Mr. President.
I noticed, Mr. President, that in the Pangilinan and Recto bills on this matter, SBN 58, authored by Senator Pangilinan, and SBN 816, authored by Senator Recto, there was a mention of a 2-year time frame in the implementation of the Free Internet Access Program. May we know why was this not adopted in the committee report?
Mr. President, the DICT is already in the midst of implementing this program. In fact, a number of the provisions are support the implementation because we had talked about in our hearings some of the difficulties that they are experiencing. For example, the permits, no, for the local governments, even the availability of telco providers. So the 2-year window, Mr. President, it's already an ongoing program. So we thought it best to just delete that and just keep to the current schedule of the ICT. However, Mr. President,
do we know, Mr. President, the current schedule of the DICT?
from the previous hearing, Mr. President, they had some commitments given to the committee. For example, they had committed that their first run, if I may just refer to my notes, the first run by November 2017. 12,000. Yeah. They are targeting to hit 12,000 public places by November 2017, Mr. President. This is still not the total number that is envisioned by the bill or by the law, but this is what they can do for this year. In short, we have the money, we do have the intention to do this, Mr. President, but because of the permits and because of the availability of telco providers, they can only hit about 12,000 public places for 2017. So I take it, Mr. President, that there are some factors beyond the control of the ICT that will disallow them from actually implementing the program all throughout. And in fact, some of the provisions in the bill, like the fast tracking, for example, and the provision of spectrum, were really put there so that they could overcome some of these challenges in their rollout.
And the bill, in fact, mandates the DICT as lead agency to come up with a comprehensive plan and schedule for the rollout of the program.
Yes, Mr. President.
Is there any envisioned timeline for this, the rolling out of the program?
Mr. President, they only gave us targets, actually, for this year and for the succeeding years. We can submit that. However, well, probably, initially, we were expecting that to probably just come in the IRR. But if there are targets, Mr. President, that you would want to see, we could probably also put that in the bill, no, as an amendment. My only concern with putting the target is that there are some things which are not under their control. So even if we put a target, Mr. President, but for example, in a particular area, wala namang cell site, even if that area is part of the target, we really wouldn't be able to fulfill this program in that area. So we're open to amendments, Mr. President, but there are concerns that are beyond the control of the ICT.
Yes, I know that it is probably would be too much for us to really indicate in the bill itself the specific timeline for the coming out of the comprehensive plan and the schedule for the rolling out of the program itself. But of course, we cannot just really make it something that would be indefinite, since the need, the public need and the public demand is there.
We're open, Mr. President, to putting back that provision on a timeline with the understanding that there are certain areas for rollout that are probably out of the control of the ICT.
Okay. Now, unlike other utilities, for example, such as the electric power or clean water, internet access necessitates certain disclosures from users, be it usernames or passwords or log in the passwords or even their internet activities. And to me, this could result in vulnerabilities in privacy of our citizens who make use of our public internet, which the government who provides the services could have access to. Now, how will the access to the internet be regulated?
Actually, Mr. President, no, I heard that this would be the line of questioning of the good lady from Bicol. To be honest, when I looked at the law again, there aren't very many, if not, I think there aren't any real provisions, no, on data privacy. Of course, there is an understanding that we won't be breaking the law. So our Data Privacy Act, some provisions in the Cybercrime Act will of course be followed. But we would welcome probably amendments to support the data privacy of the users, Mr. President. Probably as an amendment, individual amendment of the good lady from Bicol, we could probably support that because we do realize that there aren't maybe enough provisions on this topic, Mr. President.
I need to ask that, Mr. President, and the good sponsor, because under Section 10, the DICT again is mandated to collect data, which shall aid in monitoring and assessing the effective implementation of this act. So specifically, what data will the DICT be authorized to collect?
Yes.
We have to be certain about it. We all know about certain problems surrounding the implementation of the Data Privacy Act. And what calls to mind is what happens to the COMELEC database, the data breach, the private data breach of the COMELEC database. And there's a lot of questions there, and that's why I actually filed a resolution calling for an inquiry in aid of legislation into that, given the findings or the decision of the National Privacy
If I may,
Commission.
Mr. President, initially the data to be collected there would be big data. So meaning these are your data points coming from individuals that may support policy in the future. For example, Mr. President, when we talk about big data, you look at the overall usage of the internet without necessarily pinpointing individuals' usage. So you look at overall usage. I actually filed a big data bill in the 16th Congress, Mr. President. This is actually a tool being used these days for policy making to be able to get support for policy making. However, the line that mustn't be crossed is really the individual data, which is your browser history and all of these things, Mr. President. We could probably amend this further during the period of amendments to make it more specific on what data can or should or shouldn't be taken by government. But just to announce, Mr. President, that the current program of the ICT does get your personal data because you get a larger allocation for registering your name. So by registering your name and your address and your details, you're allowed a larger allocation than what is given to guests. Right now, the program is that you're allowed 50 megabytes when you log on to the pilot areas, but you're allowed 200 megabytes if you provide your information and who you are or you register.
And precisely, Mr. President, that's why I want to know, also for the enlightenment of the public, is there any information that needs to be disclosed prior to having internet access?
What I know from the hearings, Mr. President, no, you don't need to disclose for the 50 megabytes for your guest account. But if you want to be a registered user, you need to register and you're allowed a larger allocation at 200 megabytes. That's the current program of DIC, Mr. President. No? That's the pilot program that they are running. I don't have the exact data sets, no, but it would probably include, if I can remember from the hearings, your name, email address, telephone number, and contact information.
Is there a time or data limit that will be enforced on internet access?
Yes, there's a 50 megabyte cap per day for guests. If you're registered, it's 200 megabytes per day, and a different cap for SUCs and state universities and colleges.
Now, Section 5 talks about the coverage of the program. And indeed, these are the very public places and government offices that must be given free internet access by the public. And I think the list itself is complete enough. But on the second paragraph of the same provision, the DICT is supposed to be, or is authorized to set standards and qualifications in determining which public spaces and government offices shall be included and prioritized for the rollout of the program. I understand that this refers to the prioritization in the rollout. So it does not really limit, or it does not really set to, is not really envisioned for the DICT to set standards for the overall access to internet, because this is precisely just with respect to the prioritization. Are there mechanisms in place to settle issues of coverage, even in the rollout stage?
No, Mr. President, the DICT largely has the responsibility to determine the rollout and the priorities. When we talk about standards here, Mr. President, I think the intention was the infrastructure present to be able to roll out the program. So if in a particular area there is no infrastructure, then it does not meet the standards of the program and therefore will probably be deprioritized.
So that would be one of the foremost criteria.
Yes,
The availability of the infrastructure.
yes.
Because we could see or witness certain issues here, or certain disputes between which particular, for example, which state universities need to be prioritized, which public airports need to be prioritized. So there might be
There
disputes.
probably will be, Mr. President, but this is something we left to the implementing agency to determine in the IRR. Again, if there are provisions you would like to add here, then we're very open to that. But we felt that the implementing agency has enough expertise on the matter to determine these disputes, if ever they may come up.
Section 6, Mr. President, relate to the permitting and certification. The DICT shall streamline the process for the application, renewal, and release of permits and certificates pertinent to the effective implementation of this act. I know that this could very well be covered again by the corresponding IRR, but may we just know at this point exactly what permits and certificates are contemplated?
Well, in the hearing, Mr. President, the DICT and the telcos mentioned that they need about 25 to 30 permits at the local government level just to be able to put up the proper infrastructure for our internet needs. And they've identified that this is probably one of the main reasons why it's very difficult to roll out this program now. In fact, in many areas, they have not found a telco provider, even though that there is money that they are willing to pay for, no? Because the telco providers have said that they've been applying for permits and they can't get the proper permits to put up their sites. Now, Mr. President, this is a national program, and the reason why we're making it to a law is because we agree that this has to be prioritized and this is an important program. So we put this provision here so that the DICT can run this national program, be able to set the standards for this permitting, and be able to fast track a lot of the permits needed from the telco side and from their side to be able to put up the infrastructure to roll out this program. We left it a little broad, Mr. President, because we understand that this will probably have to be fleshed out in the IRR. But this provides them the authority and the power to actually fast-track the permits needed for this program to be run.
In which case, we just have to really hope or keep our fingers crossed that these requirements about permits and certificates would not just be another one of those bureaucratic mechanisms. There's got to be some limitations also in the IRR as to the issuance of permits and certificates.
Well, the idea of having this provision is primarily to go beyond or to surpass the bureaucratic problems that they are experiencing right now. Even the ICT, as a government agency, still has to get these permits as well if they put up facilities on their own. And they're also experiencing a lot of issues in terms of this permitting. So by having Section 6, you're actually allowing them to put together guidelines to fast-track these permitting issues, Mr. President. Now, if you look at one of the paragraphs here, it says there that no additional steps, permits, certificates, or fees shall be required from any applicant other than the requirements stipulated by the DICT. So this actually hopes to streamline the necessary permits that everyone involved in this endeavor will need to get so that the rollout can really be faster.
That's good to know. Now, I see or consider Section 8 as a very significant feature of the bill. I'm referring to the exclusivity arrangements,
Yes.
the prescription or the prohibition against exclusivity arrangements in favor of a single telecommunications entity. This is definitely allied to our antitrust endeavors.
Yes, Mr. President.
And to the competition. We are all for fair and open competition, although in the industry, there's just a few players, and we hope that that would expand in due time. My question in relation to this is there any remedy for the violation of this particular provision, or is there any contemplated penalty, whether in the bill itself or in the IRR? But if there is any intention to impose any penalty, whatever it is, administrative penalty, for example, it's got to be in the bill. It cannot be in the form of the IRR.
Yes, Mr. President. We did not intend to put a penal provision or an administrative penalty specific to Section 8 because it is up to the ICT to actually implement this provision or not. So we did not put a penalty provision on their part if they do get into an exclusivity arrangement with one of the telcos or one of the service providers. We thought it best that this is enough guidance on their part not to do it because it's pretty clear that it's proscribed or prohibited.
But would the good sponsor agree that there could be violations of this particular provision, while this is in fact couched in mandatory terms, because you are precisely prohibiting exclusivity arrangements or monopoly? But what if in reality this would be the tendency of certain institutions?
Well, Mr. President, again, that
The
probably...
covered institutions, I'm referring to the covered institutions. Public.
Well, considering that the lead agency is really just the ICT, no? It will be totally up to them whether they would get into an exclusivity arrangement or not because the money also flows through them. So it would rather be, it's not, Mr. President, the case that there are multiple agencies or multiple groups that will get into that because for this particular program, it really is the ICT which is the lead agency. Now that being said, we could, maybe we could consider a penalty if that is the wish of the senator. However, as author of this particular provision, we feel that maybe this is enough already. The outright prohibition is enough already without a penal provision connected to it, Mr. President.
This is certainly a statement of policy to be consistent with existing law,
Yes.
particularly the free and fair competition law. But it can also be construed as going beyond statement of policy. If we are to expect strict enforcement or strict compliance, then there ought to be a corresponding penalty.
We can take that up in the period of amendments, Mr. President, if you so wish.
That's all for this representation, and I commend the good sponsor for giving priority to this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator De Lima.
Mr. President, 1 minute suspension.
Session is suspended. Sino next meron? Start. Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The minority leader has manifested his intention to interpolate, so at this point, we would like to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1277.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, there being no other matter, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, January 17, 2017.
Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, January 17, 2017.